Hey there, Internet. My name's Luxander, and today I want to talk about, can trans people have kids? Can trans people become parents? Basically, that question. I want to talk about, the different ways that you can become a parent aside from just biologically having kids, but I also want to talk about the biological aspect of trans people reproducing. Trans people are fully capable of being well-adjusted parents, just like cis people can be good parents or bad parents. Trans people are just as varied, but they are just as capable. I know several trans people who have kids, and some of them are some of the best parents and have the most wholesome family dynamics that I've ever seen. One of the ways that trans people can become parents is to adopt. I will admit at the gate though that I don't know very much about the adoption process. I know that a lot of the available adoption services in this country that I live in are kind of Catholic a little bit, just a little bit Catholic. So it's very possible that trans and other queer people might have a difficult time getting one of those adoption agencies to see them as a valid parent. But if you can find a nice adoption agency in a state where there are anti-discrimination protections for trans people, I'm sure that process would be significantly easier. I feel like I should have researched that part, but we're just moving on now. Another way that trans people can become parents without their own biological input into that process is by becoming partners with someone who already has kids. I know of at least one queer family that has this kind of dynamic. In their family, there are 2 kids from a previous relationship. The person who physically had the kids is an agender AFAB person, AFAB meaning assigned female at birth, and they are partnered with 2 trans women who both take on a mothering role for the kids. So in this particular dynamic, you have one trans parent who physically had their kids, and then 2 trans parents who are just kind of being step-parents in that way, which I guess is also an example of how a polyamorous relationship can be a group parent effort as well. Leading off of that example, there are plenty of trans folks who didn't realize they were trans and didn't come out until later in life, so that would be after they've already gotten married and had their kids as their assigned gender. This can present some difficulties with the children having to go through the transition process with the parents, but as far as I know, most people retain their relationships with their kids. There's just an adjustment period to figuring out how to interact with a parent who once fulfilled this role and maybe is now fulfilling a separate role. But at the end of the day, they're still the kid's parent. That's still the relationship. Now we'll kind of get into the part that I think people will be most curious about, which is whether trans people can have kids after they've transitioned. Obviously, if a trans person has socially transitioned but not medically transitioned, then they would retain all of the reproductive capabilities that they grew up with. So for example, a pre-transition trans man could be impregnated and carry a baby to term, and a pre-transition trans woman could potentially get someone pregnant. This is of course barring any pre-existing fertility problems. But one of the things they really hammer home when you are starting hormone treatment is that it may affect your fertility. And obviously, if you have surgeries to remove reproductive parts, you would lose the ability to biologically reproduce. So my understanding for trans women is that being on hormones for an extended period of time can lower sperm count to a point where it is no longer viable in use for impregnation. However, if you've only been on it for a short period of time, you can come off of the hormones and your body will begin to reproduce sperm at a similar rate to previously, and then you can go ahead and have kids that way. I do want to emphasize, though, that if you are on estrogen for an extended period of time, it can make you completely sterile, so if you do want to have kids, it may be a wise choice to preserve those bits of you that can be used in that way, which is another example of a way that trans people could have kids. You could freeze your sperm or your eggs to be used in vitro fertilization later on down the line, which would kind of get around the part where you may become totally sterile later on. It's a similar story for trans men and AFAB non-binary folks. Being on hormones for an extended period of time can impact your ability to become pregnant if you want to do that, but if you're only on it for a short period of time and you come off of it, your body will generally start up its processes again, and you should be able to become pregnant. Trans men who have not had top surgery can also lactate in order to chest feed their child. There are also devices that can be used to assist trans men who have had top surgery in continuing to chest feed with some tubes basically, so that the child will still have this body experience. And as a point of interest, some trans women can be induced to lactate. There's actually a medication that trans women can take that induces lactation when used in combination with a breast pump. So if a trans woman has a baby with a cis woman, the trans woman could also take part in chest feeding. Or if a trans woman is in a relationship with a trans man who is not able to or does not want to chest feed, she could take on those responsibilities, which I just think is so neat. The human body is amazing, and science is amazing, and the world is so great. In summary, there are a lot of different ways to have a family, there are a lot of different ways to become a parent, and trans people are definitely capable of being parents, whether that is taking on the role for a previous marriage, or adopting, or having their own biological kids. Just as an addendum here, I want to mention that when trans men and AFAB non-binary folks have pregnancies and kids, they call themselves seahorse parents, because seahorses, the males actually are the ones who carry the babies in pregnancy. So just much love to all of my seahorse parents out there who have to do a very difficult gendered thing in having a baby while still retaining their identity and being misgendered by doctors. I love you. But that is all for today. I hope that answered some of your questions, if you were curious. If you're trans and you have kids, I would absolutely love to hear about your adorable families in the comments below. And of course, if anyone has any further questions, you can leave them for me. I will be checking out the comments as per usual to answer your questions and read about your lovely families. But yeah, that's all from me today. If you like this video, please give me pretty analytics to look at and comments to read. Find me on Patreon, subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications, and I really hope that you have an okay day. Bye! If your name is supposed to be on here and it's not, I apologize. It's the beginning of the month and Patreon is a dingus, but I do want to give a special shout out to The Gay Agenda, Amber Music, David Walter, Jenny Swindles, Elijah Lane, Jess Zendrex, Gretchen Becker, Wellington Marcus, Nicolette Klassen, Alex Badilla, Mr. Atheist, and all the rest of my lovely patrons. You're great people, and I love you.